Hi, I'm Stuart from the Norfolk Honey Company and welcome back to our allotment apiary for another in our Getting Started in Beekeeping series for this year. Today we were going to carry out a disease inspection, but we've noticed that there are several people working their allotments this afternoon, and carrying out a disease inspection entails shaking all the bees off the comb so that you can see the brood. And although if you've watched some of the other videos, you'll see how calm these bees are. What we don't want to do is to put other allotment holders in a position where maybe they're going to be hassled by some bees. So we're going to postpone the disease inspection and just take a look as a normal inspection. We'll have a look for some queen cells. Last week some of you spotted that there was a wax moth running around on the final frame. It was around the 10-minute mark. If you have a look at that video again, there's a greater wax moth just running across the bottom of the frame as I put it back into the hive. So perhaps we'll see if we can spot any signs of a wax moth, and we'll also check in the super to see how the nectar is going in there and whether they're starting to run out of space. What I intend to do is to allow them to fill up the super, and then we'll perform, if it's not too late in the season, we'll perform an artificial swarm on them so that we can split the colony and double up so that we've got two colonies here going into the winter, and we've still got plenty of time to be able to do that. So the smoke is lit, let's get down into the hive and have a look at what we've got. Okay, so the usual procedure, which is to give them a little bit of smoke at the entrance, and then we can take the roof off and see how things are looking. And again, before we have a look at the super, we'll take this off and inspect the brood box first. And I can feel that there's a reasonable amount of weight in there, so that's good. Again, the bees seem nice and calm. Now this week I'm inspecting from the opposite side, just so that we don't cast too much of a shadow across the frame so that you can see them. So that's the queen excluder removed. That's our first frame, and the bees have pulled that and are storing lots of nectar in that frame. So that goes down in front of the hive to give me space at this edge so that I can continue the inspection. And while I'm doing the inspection, I'm mindful of how the bees are reacting, and also thinking about the fact that we've got a young family behind us that are on their allotment. So if things get a little bit excitable with the bees, then I'd have no hesitation in just shutting the hive up and coming back another time, because I don't want to disturb other allotment users. So we're just having a look for any signs of that wax moth. We've got some brood on that side of the frame in the centre. But on the other side it's all capped off and nicely stored. So we'll move on to the next frame, and you'll see that this one is our number 1 frame. So here we've got lots of capped brood, a nice seam of honey around the top, so that's in this capped area here, and then normally there'd be a little bit of pollen, and you could possibly see some pollen just in the top section here. And the same on the reverse side. helps that the weather is fine, and that tends to keep the bees active and tends to make sure that they don't get too excitable while you're inspecting them. So I think we're okay for now. So I'm just going to have a look in this frame, and in here we've got lots of eggs. So the queen has been across this frame and laid lots of eggs, and here you can see that we've got lots of pollen being stored around the brood nest area, and this is honey stores that they've put that's been capped around the top, and pretty much the same on the other side. So that frame goes back in. I don't know whether you can see here, but we've got a couple of bees sharing some pollen. Let's see if we can get a close-up. Another bee has just come to join, and the three of them are now sharing some pollen. You might be able to make out the pollen just in there. And of course it's always nice to just pause and watch your bees. It's part of the hobby, it's part of the fun, and it keeps it interesting for everybody. So we'll just give them a little smoke and then we can move on. And this frame we've got a large amount of pollen here. And this is being stored to feed to the brood. And again the same on this side. So my primary point of looking at the bees today is trying to see if we've got any signs of wax moth, but I can't see anything at the moment, so that's both a good thing for me, but also I'd like to have shown you what the wax moth looks like and what it can actually do in terms of damaging your hive, but maybe the bees have sorted it out themselves. So again, lots and lots of pollen going into the hive at the moment. And on this frame we've got bees that are starting to emerge, and they will in turn become nurse bees and start cleaning up cells before advancing on to other duties. Another good frame full of brood. And the same on the reverse side. Still no sign of any wax moth. And lots of nectar being stored on this frame. And that can give rise to problems of frames being connected to each other. So on the next frame you'll see what I mean. I'm just going to leave this frame out for a second. Oh, there's the queen. So I've got our queen just moving across the frame here, nice and slowly, not really bothered too much by my interfering with the colony, and she's looking very well. So although I was going to leave this frame out, we'll pop it back because it's got the queen on. And so these last two frames are the troublesome frames, as you'll recall from the last video. We managed to tear a hole in this frame, and this one was the drone brood frame, and they've started to draw the comb out, they've started to draw the cells out. But on this side what's happened is they've not drawn any of the cells out, but they've connected it to the adjoining frame, and that's what these bits of wax are that you can see the bees on here. And they're now cleaning them up because there's lots of nectar on them, and I've torn it open again. So this frame's going to have to come out at some point because it's becoming a bit of a mess. And then the final frame, we'll leave this frame out for a second, and then we'll look at number 5, which is the frame that I wanted to replace. And this one has now got lots of emerging brood. So this one is nearly ready to come out, and because it's towards the end of the brood box, as we get towards the end of the season, the queen will stop laying in this frame, and we can then remove it and replace it with another frame. Still no sign of that wax moth that we spotted belatedly in the video from last week. I'm sure if I've missed it, someone will spot it in the video and let me know. But everything's looking fine in there. I'm happy with the colony in general. They are still very calm. And now we'll just pop back these frames, and then we can close the colony up again, and then we'll take a look at the super. Just make sure we don't crush many bees. So again, to close up the frames, I ease my hive tool in at the end and just push them all across at the same time. Just using a little bit of smoke just to ease the bees out of the way. And by pushing the frames across so that they're tight to each other, you maintain the bee space, and in that way you don't get lots of additional brace comb. So with this frame, we can't easily push this frame in at the end here because we're going to crush and roll lots of bees. So this is the only time today that I'm going to shake some bees off the frame. So just gently we'll shake the bees off onto the top bars, and then we don't have any bees on the frame and they can slide in quite easily, and the bees will just go back down into the brood box between the gaps in the top bars. So that's the inspection completed. Now we can pop the queen excluder back on. Carefully on, I put it on at an angle and just gently lower it, wiggling the queen excluder across, and that pushes and brushes the bees off from underneath, and so we don't crush any bees. And then I can lift the super back on. And using the same process, wiggling it on so that we brush the bees away and we don't crush any. So let's have a look inside the super. So what we'll do is remove one of the frames and have a look at how they're filling it up. And you can see that they are capping the honey stores as they fill up the cells and remove the excess water, and they're then converting it into honey. And I'll just turn the frame over, and again on this side you can see how well they're doing, and that's really fantastic. They've done brilliantly well this season. So we'll pop that frame back in, and let's have a look at one more. And here we have another where they're starting to cap all of the cells ready for storing, and busy working on the other cells, filling them up with nectar and honey. And on this side you can see that there aren't any capped cells, but the bees are busily filling them up with nectar. So that's fantastic, really pleased with that. So gently back in, and then we'll pop the crime board back on, and I'll just tap the bees off the crime board so that we don't crush any bees. And again, just placing it on, give it a wiggle. Doesn't matter which way round it goes, nice and secure, and then we can pop the roof back on. And that's another inspection completed for another week. So that's another successful inspection. I'm really pleased with the way these bees have turned out on our allotment this year. We've got lots of people up here today, and the bees haven't caused any problem at all, even though I've carried out an inspection. And it's really important that if you've got bees where there are other members of the public, that you need to just take them into account. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing, and don't forget our Facebook group, which is Stuart's Beekeeping Basics. My thanks to everyone that's signed up to our Patreon page. That's where you can help support us in producing these videos, and I'm very grateful to everybody that's signed up there. We're hopefully going to carry out a disease inspection next week, see if we can track down that wax moth and just check the general health of the brood, but from what I've seen everything looks fine, so I don't have any real concerns. But until we carry out that inspection, we'll catch up next time. Thanks for watching.